What is going on, guys? Samuel World from Samuel Legends here, back with another video for y'all today. And that'll be a fun video too. Today I'm going to talk about 20 of, I think, are the 20 most disappointing movies to come out in the 2020 so far. Like, I've been enjoying doing these like best of 2020 videos, honestly. You know, it's only like 6 years and technically 7 if I'm building this in March of 2026. But I'm fun to look back at some of these views and like, yeah. Again, I did do a few shorts on Stan. Of course, I did one on Surprising. I think I meant to get this point one out after that, honestly. I think I actually filmed it, actually, and like, but I just now aren't editing it on, so again, like, just stuck on weird. Stuck on it a little bit. Again, I did post some updates on my community page. I just want to know like what's going on. So I'm not getting into all details here. But I usually look back at the year and talk about what movies in the 2020s disappointed most. I think considering I meant to get this video out soon, honestly. I figured why not expand and do like a top 20, do like a 20 list again. Not like an actual top 20 list, so just in general talk about the 20 movies in the 2020s so far that have disappointed me the most. And that unfortunately does happen every year, honestly, where you watch a film and you're like, man, I wish I liked them more. And you probably were excited, at least interested, whether it be from the concept, the cast, the director, or like a trailer and all that stuff, and then the movie just really lets you down, honestly. Or especially from a franchise that you always love and always enjoy. Unfortunately, that happens, and the 2020s are no exception on that. So, again, considering I haven't gotten this list out earlier, I'm expanding it to a 20, honestly. So, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and let me know what films in the 2020s disappoint you the most. Which films that you were hyped, but you end up feeling let down below in the comment section. So, yeah, I got 20 films stock right here, so let's get started. And the first movie, I'll tell you the first two movies I'll be talking about here are actually films I will say are most disappointing films of last year. Again, I did make a video talking about them on my most disappointing films 2025 if you want to check that video out. And these are the films I'll say I would put my top two, honestly, if I remember correctly. And that is Flight Risk, which I think was my most disappointing last year, and Wolfman. Like, Flight Risk, I feel like, really? You're disappointed by that movie? And to be fair, I did not watch any trailers, honestly, on that movie, honestly. And the only reason I was interested was because, obviously, Mel Gibson. So much about him as a person, but as a director, all his films have been bangers, obviously, especially Hacksaw Ridge, which came out in 2016, which is kind of crazy that it's not 10 years old, honestly, but it was an incredible war movie that got a lot of Oscar buzz for good reason, and I love that. Like, I haven't seen that movie recently, but I remember absolutely loving that movie. It's something that I don't go back and rewatch often, but when I do, I'm like, oh man, this is definitely a really war movie. And you return all these like to do like a schlocky action movie that's was also actually on my wish list of that year as well. Yeah, Flight Risk was not a good movie at all, honestly. While the actors do try their best with the role, especially Mark Wahlberg. Well, again, the film is just so inept. It's just terribly directed. Has some of the most idiotic, stupid moments I've seen in the film in quite some time. Everything makes no sense, honestly. Has no stakes, and it's just no fun to be had here at all. Honestly, the characters are just there, and it's just a movie that just, even when it tries to be like a schlocky action movie, it just doesn't deliver that fun and energy that you expect, honestly, especially with that with a really interesting concept, actually. But again, the characters are so actually stupid that you just face palm so much a lot of stuff they end up doing here. Like, maybe actually watch it, actually, so you won't actually escape. And the movie is just overall very repetitive, honestly, and just makes some decisions that are just like, are you serious? And yes, considering Mel Gibson, I expected more. And of course, we get to my disappointing movie, and that is Wolfman. Which, of course, why it's disappointing was because, you know, it's another Eros Moss movie, and those have been like kind of decent recently. And also it's directed by Leigh Whannell. Who, of course, you guys don't know who Leigh Whannell is. Is the same guy that basically was a writer for James Bond for a long period of time besides Jim directing. And all three of the movies he directed so far have been great. Insane Chapter 3 probably in debate of being the best of the franchise, despite being a prequel. Upgrade, which is a badass action movie. And of course, another kind of universe monster movie, The Invisible Man, which won mid 2021 exactly a year that didn't have a lot of movies in general. Invisible Man was definitely one of the better ones in that year. I think it made my top 10 that year. I think it made a lot of people's top 10 that year. Again, American 2020 wasn't a high bar, but still, Invisible Man was a fantastic movie. And still one of the best horror movies of 2020s for sure. Wolfman, well, I wouldn't say it's bad by any means. It's just a dull, bland, and forgettable movie. That's really the best way to say it, but I really don't have much in it but this movie. I can definitely see the concept of what they're trying to go for here. it just doesn't play to the strengths that this director really has, and it's again, him directing a Wolfman movie had so much potential to be an enthralling, engaging, and thrilling movie. And again, while I wouldn't say it's bad, it was definitely a major letdown. And speaking of 2020, we get to actually a 2020 movie on set, a film that, while I wouldn't say it's as bad as some make it out to be, it's hard not this film was definitely a letdown. Honestly, the film that gets worse the more I think about it, and that is Wonder Woman 1984. Again, I wouldn't say this film is like one of the worst superhero movies of all time, like some make it out to be. You know, there are some areas where I'm like, yeah, I can totally understand why people would think that. But like, I mean, it still has some fun to it. I mean, the performances are still pretty good. It does have some good elements to it. But it definitely is a big step down from the Wonder Woman movie 2017, which generally was definitely a surprise, honestly. Again, I was not expecting to enjoy the 2017 one as much as I have, honestly. Again, while Gal Gadot does get a lot of hate, honestly, I think she does do a great job as Diana Prince. Does a great job with that fish out water aspect and that charm and naivety of Wonder Woman as a character. Like, she is just great as a character, and that movie was great in general. Despite when the search is like some good act, honestly, it's still a really great action movie that has some really great spectacle, solid CGI, some badass action moments. Chris Pine being a great love interest, one of the better love interests in superhero movies, in my head. Honestly, and just still having some really touching and emotional moments that really just hit you in the feels. And just set up Wonder Woman greatly for that better universe. Better for us, but again, that's that day. And hey, and also hey, we're like Patty Jenkins returning to play the character. Sorry, but hey, with Patty Jenkins returning to direct it, sorry, with Patty Jenkins returning to direct a movie, honestly, it was definitely a sign that the movie, you know, as weird as it's gonna be still set within the 80s, obviously. I mean, still as I saw cast and saw direction, obviously, and of course, there was a time where obviously movies were very weird, because obviously it was like 2020, obviously, and when the coronavirus hit, so yeah. Yeah, and I remember people actually being kind of high on the movie, but people have gone down a lot since it came out. And yeah, I'm also one of those people. But again, I wouldn't call it one of the worst superhero movies of all time, like some make it out to be. Though I do understand, especially with in places like that body swap aspect, where basically Steve's making out someone and not a body, and I was kind of bringing Matthew Trevor in a way that's like, it's hard not to give so. What do you think about that aspect? But there's still some good spectacle to it, some strong action. The performances are still really good. Again, also Kristen Wiig and Pedro Pascal also do a great job to the roles. Honestly, Pedro Pascal plays a really great hammy villain, actually. Again, the villain could have been a little bit better, obviously, but he's definitely, I'll still say, one of the better villains of this DC universe. And definitely has some more fun moments of the film, obviously. But again, the story is pretty much all the film's problems lie, honestly. When, again, the implications of that whole the whole wish thing, and Kristen Wiig's character, and some aspects of that, honestly, especially how the film ends. I'm like, okay. Like, it's a really confusing, totally messy movie. Now, all it actually does have this moments that, for me, at least to me, I think is one of the worst super movies of all time. I still can't help but feel very disappointed by it. And the next movie, basically, I'm talking about, is one I actually don't really have like, too much to actually say about as a whole, and that is Willy's Wonderland. Nicolas Cage, and potentially Friday Night and Freddy's type of movie. And you separate the part of Nicolas Cage that makes him Nicolas Cage. Not saying about any means, honestly. I'd say it's more forgettable than anything, but film with the concept has, and obviously, Nick Cage, basically being like a Friday Night at Freddy's scenario type of movie. It should have been a little better than this. This is definitely one I don't really have too much to say about, honestly, but again, it could have been so much better. And then we got another potentially like 2021 movie that I also was really interested in, but was also kind of disappointed, even despite the weird elements to it. That's because I'm not a fan of this property, obviously, and the previous movies were pretty good. And that's the SpongeBob movie, Sponge and Run. Again, SpongeBob, like, I'm pretty sure if you haven't watched SpongeBob, I'm pretty sure you guys know what SpongeBob is at this point, obviously. And also, I like a lot of people, I grew up with the show, obviously, and the original movie is like still one of the most rewatchable movies of all time. Like, I remember, I had a trip, honestly. I took a trip to see one of my aunts and all that. I remember I took a trip to see one of my aunts, and the only thing I did in that time was watch the SpongeBob movie. which was annoying my family. It definitely was very helpful when it had a hurricane and I ended up repeating the whole movie. And even the second movie I thought was actually pretty underrated, actually. So I was like, hey, I'm just gonna see what, especially with the new interesting animation, and if I felt like it was kind of repeating some concepts of SpongeBob movies. I thought it was gonna be a fun time, obviously, but unfortunately, it was just a bit of a letdown. The animation is great, it definitely has its moments, but again, that Camp Kroll stuff really brings the movie down. Like, I never was into that concept, honestly. Like, I think I only seen like the first trailer of it, but that when they actually came out to that whole Camp Kroll aspect, to make it like actually it's canon to the whole SpongeBob universe. I'm like, really? And of course, I'm not getting the whole Steven Spielberg would be like still rolling in this script. Obviously, I'm not getting into that kind of stuff. Obviously, I think people are like way too in their face about that. I think people are just like taking that way too seriously on it times. That's such a renovated, obviously. But again, considering how good the previous two SpongeBob movies were, honestly, I guess I expected still a little more, honestly. And until I could have also been seeing Chief movie up, honestly, but I was never really snapping that, honestly. But yeah, Sponge on the Run, it's not a bad movie by any means, but again, just could have been so much better. Yeah, I noticed that this was going to be 20 minutes, honestly, but some of the movies I ended up having tired, honestly, because it makes sense, honestly, but I still hope you're enjoying that last, obviously. But anyways, we got another two movies in a certain franchise that, well, the franchise is not the greatest, honestly, because the previous movie was actually pretty good, and these next movies kind of brought that trilogy down. And that is, of course, Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends. I mean, I actually thought the hell out of the 2018 Halloween movie, actually. I think it's probably mainly, it's like the best sequel of the franchise, obviously. And there's definitely some films of Halloween that I do enjoy, like 2 to an extent, 3, and even 4, honestly. I enjoy 2.0. Everything else, you can just take it or leave it. And some I think it's just bad or terrible, obviously. I think in 2018 was actually a pretty great movie, actually. That I think really brought back the Michael Myers that we wanted and had some really fantastic moments. And Halloween Kills happened a few years later, which, again, it's not one that honestly just gets worse the more I think about it. So I won't call it a bad movie by any means. Again, hearing that evil dies tonight over and over again thing, it just gets old real fast. You can really tell what they're trying to do, obviously, and you can tell that there's one character making just the stupidest decision just to keep the plot going. And while that's novel horror movies, there's definitely a line to that, obviously, and they didn't cross that for sure. And then having Lloyd be like, coming to us from most of the movie doesn't really help either, and just the kid is nothing interesting in general too well. We get some really brutal kills, some will deny that. The film is just not the most entertaining to watch. And then we get to the very divisive Halloween Ends, which, again, too bad I have not seen I don't think I've seen Halloween Ends since it came out, actually, but I imagine I was like, really? This is how you want to end your trilogy? And apparently they try to like, oh, we planned this the whole time. We didn't want the whole thing to be like Michael versus Laurie. Then why did you make it Michael versus Laurie? Like, I will never understand that. Like if you didn't want to make it Michael versus Laurie for this whole trilogy, why did you do it anyways? That's something I would never get, honestly. But again, I don't think Halloween is a bad movie by any means, honestly. Like I will say, I get what they're trying to do. I understood what they were trying to go for. The concept, I'm so bad to be like the next like Carnation Evil and all that stuff. It's actually a pretty interesting aspect to it. I can definitely see what they were going for, obviously. Like it's definitely a very risky movie, and honestly, it's caused a lot of division. I know a lot of people that actually love that concept, and a lot of people that hate it. And you got people like me that were just more in the middle, obviously, to while there was some good aspects with it, there was some aspects that's like, really, you doing this in a Halloween movie? And you decided to put shove in like the Michael Moore thing in the last like 5-10 minutes, and it's a very underwhelming end to their long debated arc. Arc that pretty much lasts like 40-50 years. This is how you end it. Again, I wouldn't call Halloween a bad movie, but again, I do appreciate the risk I was trying to go for, and I always admire directors actually wanted to do something that's actually very risky, very unique. Even then, I still think it could have been executed a lot better, obviously. And again, considering how good 2018 was, these films were definitely a letdown. Next up, one we're talking about is F9. Now, I'm someone that eventually does love this franchise, the Fast and the Furious series. Even when it gets like super ridiculous with the stories and its concepts, and again, showing all crazy shit they can really do, you know, with vehicles and cars and all that stuff. But stuff honestly, I'm still going a little appreciation towards the earlier movies, except Tokyo Drift. That movie kind of sucks, but I do have an appreciation for 1, 2, and 4. Of course, 5 is still the best in the franchise, while 6 and 7, 8 get like very loony with their concepts and their action. They're still really fun movies. Hell, I probably enjoy Hobbs and Shaw, and I definitely still enjoy Fast 10, despite its issues. F9 though, it's probably definitely the black. It's definitely a big downgrade to the other movies. I guess on that alone, it's why it's disappointing. Because even someone who defends a lot of these movies, or someone that I enjoy a lot despite, you know, the zaniness of these movies. Even I can't defend a lot of the creatures. I mean, they literally go to freaking space in this movie. They have John Cena, who plays Disney's brother, a guy that's all about family, never mentions his brother. Even I can't defend that. Bring back Han, like, why bring back Han of all characters? Honestly, I like Han, obviously, not saying that, but I like Han, but it's like, bring him back? Huh? And again, the action, the story, like, even I can defend a lot of zaniness, and also, that's why, being self-aware of that doesn't exactly make it excusable. I won't call it still a bad action movie. Like, it definitely still has its moments for sure. But again, F9 is definitely one movie zone. It just gets worse the more you think about it. And considering how much I do enjoy most of my time, again, I still do enjoy Hobbs and Shaw. I would say, Fast 10, I definitely do enjoy more this movie, though I think a lot has been more to Jason Moore's performance in that movie. Again, as someone who's a regular enjoyed this franchise, this one I definitely can't excuse. Now we got another double head. Now we get kind of triple headed here, honestly, and that's basically every Russo Brothers movies that's come out in the 2020s after Endgame. Again, I think the reason why people are really skeptical about Doomsday, obviously, is not because of the fact that they're kind of rushing to an Avengers movie, but because after Endgame, the Russo Brothers have not exactly been great with their track record. First off, they released Cherry with Tom Holland, which came out in like 2021, I believe, and what I wouldn't call like a bad movie as well. It's definitely not good one, honestly. I can definitely see what they're trying to do with the concepts and storytelling. It definitely had a great concept to it, and definitely had some great aspects to it. But it's a film that just felt very shallow, and as much as I love Tom Holland, so I feel like he's never going to skip that whole Peter Parker aspect to his character, to him as an actor, honestly. Again, there are some good moments here, but it's definitely just a lacking movie with not a lot of substance. And then they did The Gray Man, which is a film I do enjoy, but it's more on being just a fun action movie, nothing else, honestly. And then, of course, there was The Electric State that came out last year, which I think, I don't remember if it actually made my worse than that year. I think it was my top 10, actually. I think it was, I just don't mention, honestly, but Electric State was not a good movie at all, in my opinion. Like, what were they thinking? That movie just sucked. Again, considering the Russo brothers are the same people that, you know, Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame. 4 movies that pretty much the majority of people consider to be some of the best in the MCU. And mine's not included, by the way. Endgame is still my favorite in the MCU, honestly. It's even my top 10 movies of all time. And all 4 movies are in my top 10 movies of all time. I mean, all 4 movies are in my top 100 of all time. Should clarify that. And again, this is one of the Russo brothers just couldn't capture that same success with their movies on Cherry, The Gray Man, and The Electric State. I think there's also one reason why people are really just like unsure about Doomsday. Not because obviously they kind of like feel like they're rushing it, they'll do some course correcting after the whole Jonathan Majors aspect. But the fact that the last 3 movies have not been that great. And honestly, I'm gonna pick this time myself. And the next movie we talk about is a franchise that unfortunately is not really fun to talk about nowadays, and that is Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore. It's fortunately now to say it's not really fun to talk about Harry Potter anymore because of one J.K. Rowling. Again, it's pretty disappointing. It is really disappointing that it's hard not to really talk about Harry Potter because of, you know, what she has done and all the stuff. I don't need to get into all that, obviously. I'm pretty sure even if you know what Harry Potter, you know all the terrible things she has done, honestly. And this is still the latest Harry Potter movie that came out in 2022. And it's supposed to be like a 5-part movie. And the Fantastic Beasts, which is pretty unfortunate. I feel like any Harry Potter movie that's going to be like, you know, not as good as the other ones, it's always going to be disappointing, obviously. Because I pretty much enjoy every single one of the mainline Harry Potter movies. And I enjoyed the first Fantastic Beasts, honestly. But obviously, The Crown of Grindelwald was pretty bad, honestly. And again, I think this is what I kind of enjoyed when I first saw it, but after rewatching it a couple times, I'm like, really? Why did I see this? Like, it's not a bad movie. It's definitely a bit of an upward trajectory from, the Crimes of Grindelwald, but I'm like, really? Really? Hmm. It's just not really a fun movie, and it kind of goes back a lot of directions it makes in that last movie, and again, Matt Mikkelsen does do a great job as Grindelwald himself, obviously. Jude Law does good as Dumbledore, obviously. It's just a film that's just always stuck with too many characters, too many plot lines, kind of similar to the last movie. And while it has some fun aspects to it, it just doesn't really have that same charm as the first Fantastic Beasts or even any of the Harry Potter movies. And again, this is the latest Harry Potter movie, and it's supposed to be like the first of a five-part series. And from the looks like episode 26, we're not getting into those other movies anytime soon. Now we get to another film where the director had made a good first movie, but had a bit of a sophomore slump. Unfortunately, I haven't seen this one actually direct any movie since, honestly, if I remember correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong. And that is Don't Worry, Darling. This, of course, is the second interview of Olivia Wilde, and this she did a interview a few years ago before this movie with Booksmart, which movie I realized I actually forgot for some reason to include on my best 2019 video, which I don't know why, honestly. But Booksmart is an incredible all-around comedy. I actually got to see that movie actually early, an early screening actually, and check out my video I did where I talk about ranking every movie I saw early. You guys want to check that out. But yeah, Booksmart was an incredible movie that's actually very hilarious, charming, fun, great two leads, really great comedy, a very out there movie, but in a good way. And again, it's definitely a movie that I think kind of gets overlooked nowadays, honestly. Like, everyone should definitely check out. And definitely one of the better R-rated comedies to come out in that decade. And they coming with Dora Dallin from the stars of Lawrence Pugh and Harry Styles, and a really good cast in general. And that's have a great concept. Kind of feel like very Stepford Wives kind of aspect to it. And it just doesn't really do anything interesting with this mystery, unfortunately. It doesn't do anything with the concept interesting. And even the twist ends up revealing, honestly, about this and that. I'm like, ah? Okay. Okay. Again, the acting is great across the board, obviously. Like, Harry Styles actually is a really good actor, and Florence Pugh can't do no wrong, obviously. Honestly. And the acting in general is just great in general. But again, the film is just doesn't really do anything interesting with this mystery, obviously. And when it actually reveals you're like, I'm sorry, what? Again, if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. But again, considering obviously the last movie was fantastic, this was definitely left out. Not a bad movie. Again, somewhat disappointed as not being bad. It just definitely, your expectations were not as great as they once were. Or not. It just doesn't like reach the expectations that you had. Anyways, and the next movie we're going to talk about is Fixed. Again, this is one I also don't really have much to say about. It's from also came out last year, actually. And it's not one I don't know too much to say about, honestly. Well, I don't think it's as bad as some make it out to be. I can consider this from, like, Jenny Tartakovsky, the same guy that did, Death Laboratory, Samurai Jack, Smile Titan, Hold of Transylvania. I just thought it so much better. Now we got another doubleheader here, honestly, and that is like two Disney movies that came out in the 2020s. Again, I'll say, aside from Encanto and also recently was Zootopia 2, honestly, this has not been the greatest year for Disney, honestly. I was thinking including Strange World here as well, but too bad that movie was barely marketed, honestly, so even the fact that I won't think it's that bad, honestly, it's like, it wasn't that marketed, honestly. I didn't have any time for it anyways. The film I had at least like some maximum for is definitely Wish and Moana 2. Again, two films that one, Wish is obviously it's kind of bad, honestly. It definitely, honestly, gets worse the more you think about it. I think it does get worse the more you think about it, honestly, where, yeah, it's definitely one of Disney's worst movies, in my opinion. Again, definitely does have its moments, and a couple of songs are not that bad, but it's just a movie that just doesn't really just hit much. Like, feels like basically just a greatest hits version of Disney. We're not doing anything unique or interesting, which, well, you can say that's the point or not, honestly. They wouldn't try to do anything unique with it. Like, considering it's like the 100th anniversary movie of Disney, honestly, it definitely could have been so much greater than it was. Chris Brown was good, though. And then there's Moana too. Again, it's funny about I see the original Moana constantly because my nieces. The original Moana is fantastic. I do think it is actually a great movie, actually. Sequel, why I wouldn't say bad, not so much. Again, in fact, we have to acknowledge that actually was basically like another thing where basically it was like 3 episodes of a scrap TV series just put together to one movie. It kind of makes all the jumps in the movie, honestly, just make a little more sense, honestly, when it comes to like the scatness of the story and doesn't really have like an actual finale or conclusion properly. Or just needs to feel like so all over the place when it comes to like tonally and the structure. It makes sense. But except how says I just hope if we do get one 3, which is very likely, it's much better than this. Now we go from one animated movie to the next, and that is Lightyear. Now, anything that Pixar does, I always say it's going to be not good, honestly. It's always going to be a disappointing aspect to me because Pixar is pretty much, a studio that I absolutely love the door. And I do plan on actually reviewing all the movies on shorts, honestly. And I mentioned once I get my career, I do plan on doing a TOS where I rank all the movies along with the DreamWorks movies as well. So expect that coming very soon. But again, any movie that ends up being like not as great as the usual masterpieces are always going to be a little let out for me. I do pretty much enjoy all the movies that came out in 2020, honestly. Like Soul, Luca, Turning Red, Elemental, Inside Out 2, which no of my technically last year. Hell, I enjoyed Elliot from last year. And to film this, I actually did really cut the hell out of Hoppers as well. And the concept of basically a Buzz Lightyear-centric movie that basically was the movie that made Andy want a Buzz Lightyear, great concept. Unfortunately, this is a film I would say it's probably Pixar's worst movie in my opinion. Again, it's another one of those movies that just gets worse the more I think about it and the more I watch it. My opinion just continues to drop, honestly, to why I want to call it a bad movie, honestly. I think Pixar still has not made a bad movie, I would say call it which is mediocre at best. It's definitely the closest they have gotten, honestly. And again, it was just dull, understanding, Buzz is not that interesting character. The other exploring characters, aside from maybe the dog character, are just not that interesting. Definitely has its spectacle moments, and the animation is fantastic. But it's just kind of a dull movie, and do not get me started on that worst villain. The next big disappointment, one that film that also I don't really hate as much as some people seem to, honestly. But again, considering this public franchise, obviously, it definitely has been a letdown, honestly, especially when it comes to this franchise in general. In my opinion, it's probably the weakest of the franchise, and that is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Yeah, and while I'm feeling, really excited for this movie, I mean, it's freaking Indiana Jones. The thing I'm always excited for anything that comes to Indiana Jones, honestly. Like, of course, the original movie was obviously one of my favorite movies of all time, one of the best action movies, period. I think Temple of Doom is one, but I think I enjoyed the more I watch it. And Last Crusade is also a fantastic movie as well. And hell, despite its ridiculous, I even enjoyed Kid and Crystal Skull, actually. Because I actually even enjoyed that movie. But it definitely still had a lot going for it, honestly. I mean, of course, Harrison Ford is still the actor, and you got a really talented director in Hayes Mangold directing it, so it's like, this is going to be at least a fun movie, obviously, but in terms of going directions I'm like not really the biggest fan of, obviously, and I wouldn't say like ruins the entire Indiana Jones franchise by means. It's a movie that just feels just dull and mediocre, which I feel like it's on that Indiana Jones movie pretty much should be. That alone, it's why it's on this list. Now we get to number I think it's weird to actually put on the most disappointing list, but I'm doing it anyway, and that is Rebel Moon 1 and 2. Can't tell you another time, no, 2 movies on this list, honestly, but yeah. I'm just because honestly, Zack Snyder is obviously like a very infamous director, a director that definitely is, I would say, definitely is very hit or miss for me, honestly. Like, I definitely see his style, I definitely see like he was going for a lot of his movies, but a lot of movies tend to be like very style or substance, and it tends to have like visuals and spectacle over like actual storytelling. That's kind of what made things right by Stupid, which by the way, I did make a video on that movie. That's good. I'm not sure when I'm gonna do that, either before or after I release that video. But you feel check it out if I do. But it's a movie that's talking about the movie. It's gonna be talking about based on the movie like many years later. Batman vs Superman. But anyways. But anyways, he found he was gonna make his own version of basic Star Wars. Honestly, it was still pretty exciting. Honestly, because I think a director that's someone within like the visual style of Zack Snyder could actually direct a really interesting Star Wars movie. Actually, and I'll be honest, while the Red movies are not his worst movies, why I wouldn't call them like disasters, like something got to be. I think I said a lot in this video, by the way. There's not good movies, honestly. It's not just had to just opera pop, honestly. It's just these films kind of like the big issue with Zack Snyder's. there's like these are the films that basically were his like biggest tendencies and the things that he's criticized most for, especially with the slow motion, all just amped to the nth degree in this movie, and it's just doesn't really make for a really engaging movie. There aren't not much, and even with the director's cut debacle that he ended up doing with these movies, but I don't even want to get into, by the way. Even with those versions of the movie, it doesn't really change much, honestly. And the characters are just still one note. It feels like it's just never exposition and never this and that and all that stuff. And Ian and I just don't really care about much what's going on. And really, the big scale of action is why I don't think they're like terrible movies. But again, that is just what Zack Snyder is known for, but better for worse. Because now the stories and characters are just not interesting. So movies be like so goddamn movies, which by the way are so goddamn long, by the way. Just feel like it's just a drag. Now it's also weird to put this villain and like really you were like I wouldn't say I was excited for it honestly, but I was definitely curious to see how they're going to do it. And then of course, Joker fully outdo. And again, it's another movie that I wouldn't say I hate as much as everyone else does, and yeah, I still find it disappointing. Now, I'm someone that doesn't really like think the Joker's the one that like I know a lot of people that really hail Joker is a fantastic movie. I actually know some people think it's actually their favorite movie of all time actually. And I feel like it's a movie I need to really go back to a more often. But it's a great movie, honestly. I just don't say I'm like high on it as everyone else seems to, honestly. It is still a great movie with a fantastic film to walking fan who absolutely does deserve all the love you see for that performance, honestly. And obviously, Joker was a movie that like really they really need a sequel. But knowing Hollywood these days, we did end up getting a sequel and it ended up being basically a jukebox musical. Like I think on that aspect, technically, I was like, okay, that could be interesting actually. And also seeing Lady Gaga's Harley Quinn, I was like, at least has some aspects to make feel like, oh, it could be interesting. And again, I thought it was just okay at best. It definitely had its moments, and the music aspect was actually interesting, and the performances are still fantastic. But again, the film's just a film when you watch, you're like, why is this made? Like, why, why a sequel to Joker? And the ending, do not get started. Now we get to number that's again, it's also weird to put on a most disappointing video, but it's a director that I always am going to be interested in what he does, honestly. And basically, the film I'm talking about is Old, which is basically the latest M. Night Shyamalan movie that came in this decade. Definitely could put like a lot of M. Night Shyamalan movies on this list, honestly. Like, I mean, I do enjoy Uncommon, honestly, and Trap was definitely good. I definitely have potential, but again, the AI and some certain aspects, just and the logic is just like, okay. But I think Old is the more disappointing one because honestly, it's the one that has the most potential. I mean, okay, we're going to an island, you basically age a lot more often on the island, which definitely makes for a pretty interesting concept, honestly, and coming from some really great body horror aspects. But even then, the body horror aspects were just kind of, not the ones to watch. Again, it's another movie on this list I don't hate as much as people do. And again, no company like had this movie as the worst movie that came out that year. But even I still wouldn't call it a bad movie, and I still would say it's disappointing. That's why it's called M. Night Shyamalan disappointing, honestly, because I feel like he's made a lot of disappointing, honestly. But he's one who does not more. It's going to be fascinating no matter what he does. And again, this film at least has a concept, just poor execution. The next movie we talk about is a sequel to a film that actually, spoilers, probably going to make my most surprising video whenever, the most surprising video that went into it. That I think the film that actually did miss my original list, actually. And that is Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. I mean, after it was a genuine surprise. I was not about to enjoy it as much as this, much but it does kind of paint a little to nostalgia. It does it in the right ways. And while the Frozen Empire was a still a solid movie, I think it might debatably be like the best movie on this list. Again, debatably be the best movie on this list. It's a movie that just doesn't. It's a movie that overall doesn't really hit the highs of the last movie. Feels like it's just way overstuffed, honestly, and the sound elements really just don't really hit as much as they should, honestly. It's a film that just has way too many elements to it and end up focusing on the elements that are just not that interesting, honestly, and the elements that they don't focus on are the most interesting. It's really one of those movies. Still a solid, fun movie, but just doesn't really hit the highs of Afterlife. And then we get to the last two, and I knew I wanted to say these two for last, and this one's actually going to be a compilation of other movies, honestly, and that is basically a lot of the MC movies that come out in the 2020s. Again, now it's no secret that, the MCU has definitely has had a rough history after Endgame. Again, I don't think, again, I feel like I said it a lot in this video, but I don't think I pretty much still enjoy some of the MCU movie projects that came out after Endgame. I mean, how guys have been following me, like two of them literally top my best lists, honestly. Were No Way Home top my best films 2021, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 topped my best films of 2023. And so at least one that would make my best list in some way. I think Wakanda Forever still made my top 10 2022. Therefore, Wolverine was ranked number 3 2024. Therefore, and I think and I will still put like Thunderbolts and First Steps in my top 20, honestly. But even then, someone who still loves the MCU, honestly, I found a lot of the projects at this point, honestly. Some of the shows especially, but when I talk about shows here, I'm talking about movies, and yeah, there were some movies they had made that definitely have been well, based on my still trying to enjoy. They were definitely let down. Of course, first one being the first one, Black Widow. Again, 5 years too late, man. Like, I enjoyed the movie for what it is, but it's definitely on the weekend MCU movie, in my opinion. Eternals, a movie that I respect more than I actually enjoy, honestly. I never do admire what it tries to go for, honestly. I feel like I do enjoy the movie probably more than most people, but it's definitely not an MCU movie. I don't think I think it's part of the MCU. I probably got back to it at least, honestly, along with the Marvel movies, along with the Captain Marvel movies. There's probably one of the MCUs that we watched the least, honestly. Not a bad movie, and I don't do mind the ambition goes for. But again, should have been a miniseries. I still stand by that. I'll probably still put Doctor Strange 2 here, which probably is the best movie on this list. I just wish it went in a little more Sam Raimi and a little less MCU. And it doesn't really go for that multiverse and madness aspect it says in this title. So I have to put it on the list. Thor Love and Thunder, a movie that just gets worse the more I think about it. Like, it's definitely on the bottom end of MCU movies, honestly. Probably might be the worst MCU movie, honestly. You know, I wouldn't call it like terrible, but it definitely is a huge step down from Ragnarok. And the fact that I think it's worse than Thor Dark World definitely is not a good sign. Honestly, like, Screaming Girls is not funny. And you also with Christian Bale. And there's Ant-Man and the Wasp 3. Which again, that's not really, I think it's worse the more I think about it, honestly, especially after the whole, like, you know, thing happened on Jonathan Majors, where they kind of just got rid of Kang altogether for some reason, after, like, the whole thing that happened with Jonathan Majors. And now movie just feels like it's just kind of there, honestly, and the movie wasn't that great to begin with. You know, when I first watched it, I'm like, I mean, I enjoyed it, but then again, after you watch it, it just gets worse for me. Not a bad movie, but definitely not a low MCU movie for me. And I'll probably say the same thing with the Marvels, which is probably the most forgettable MCU. Like I said, Miss Marvel, I barely remember anything goes on here, and it feels like a movie. And it feels like I feel like it's a sequel to a movie we never actually got. I feel like this movie kind of feels like a third movie of a trilogy, where the second movie never actually was released. Because you know certain things, context and certain elements, obviously, and of course, the fact you watch this and that to understand this and that. Like, really, on the side, I'd rather watch, like, you know, like so many movies and shows just to understand everything. Really? We're getting to that point now? Even James Gunn's doing it. James Gunn's probably do it better, but you know what I mean. And the last movie here is Captain America: Brave New World, which it's worth it to be excited because obviously this is going to have a lot of notable like production issues. I think a lot of these movies had like real production issues. Brave New World was definitely one of the most notable examples. But you know, considering the concept and the characters and everything, and it's a movie I just wish I enjoyed more. And why don't he Brave New World? Brave New World, I think these movies like bad or terrible. You know, saying how much I used to enjoy a lot of the MCU projects, it's definitely is a letdown. I just hope that brand new day and after like Doomsday sequels, honestly, MCU can get right back on track. Now we get to the last movie I'm going to talk about here, and this is another movie that I'm like, and this actually is the most recent movie on this list, honestly, and it's probably likely going to be the most disappointing movie of the year, honestly, for me for 2026, and that is unfortunately Scream 7. And you officially said that Scream is no longer the most consistently good horror franchise. Now, I gotta say, Scream, I think it's one of the movies I think I'm just in the middle on, honestly. You know, then I won't say it's maybe not the definitive worst movie in this franchise. It's definitely not the worst horror movie of any franchise. Not like, you know, the worst of Friday the 13th, the worst of Elm Street, the worst of this franchise, the worst of that franchise. It's not like bottom of the barrel. But it's still a disappointment, honestly, because again, I do love the Scream franchise. It's probably, Spider is still my favorite horror franchise. I do love all 6 movies, honestly. Like, all of them are great, all of them have like right elements, all of them I enjoy. The original Scream is one of my favorites of all time. I even enjoy lots of Scream 2, even Scream 3, despite being the weakest one before Scream 7, I still enjoy. 4, 5, and 6, I enjoy despite their issues. But 7 just shows the franchise really is running out of steam here. And of course, I don't think it's like all of the debacles that happen in this movie. Honestly, I think like, really, you're so excited for Scream in spite of all the debacles. I mean, yeah, like obviously, I still do not like what they did with Mr. Patera and Jenna Ortega, honestly. I mean, I don't like what they did with Mr. Patera, honestly, how they treated her, obviously, and then everything on like, Campbell and everything like that. Like I'm definitely a defender. I do like Campbell, and I do like Mr. Patera, honestly, and I definitely would not blame anybody that boycotted this movie because of all the situation, all that stuff. But again, it's a Scream movie, honestly. It definitely has some interesting aspects to it, and it definitely was. I mean, the potential to bring back certain characters was definitely gonna be interesting, and interesting. I mean, Kevin Wilson's directing was pretty interesting as well. You can see Steven Prescott being mom was gonna be interesting as well. And then the film came out. And again, I just thought it was okay at best, honestly. Like, it does have some good solid kills. Kim Williamson is solid as a director, honestly. It does have its moments. Again, Steven Prescott still is a badass character. Like, she's still the best final girl in horror movies, period. For Donna, I thought that was actually pretty okay. And there are definitely also good moments overall in the movie. But it's with the story that really the movie falls apart, honestly. And also, aside from, the other character, all the other characters are just the most forgettable characters in this entire franchise. Pretty sure you guys don't even remember what they are, honestly. The meta commentary this film is known for is not really as in your face, I feel like it should be, or it's not like prevalent in a lot of this movie. You don't want to acknowledge it's like, oh, Sydney, it was weird that you went in the last movie, honestly, and like and trying to do a little thing on like parasocial relationships and all that stuff, honestly, which could be interesting, but it's just done in a very uninteresting way, in a very convoluted way, honestly. Being trying to do, and how they try to implement these bring back certain characters is like, okay, you're going that route. Again, if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. And by a country mile, it has the worst ghost rates review. I feel like if you're someone that enjoys this movie, someone who loves this movie, I'm pretty sure I can't imagine anybody not defending. It's one of those reveals that I can't imagine anyone not defending, because it is one of those things where it's like, first off, it's very, not only is it very obvious on who the killer actually is, but their reasoning and how they say it is like, that's it? That's why? And even then, it doesn't really correlate with the themes and the meta commentary. And that makes it worse. Worse. Now, I definitely did have my issues with the reviews in the last 2 movies, honestly. Most of the last one, honestly. But even now, I wouldn't say like bad reviews, honestly. I think there was more issues with logic. But here, yeah, I can't defend it at all. But again, Scream 7 is not a bad movie, honestly. But again, as someone who uses Scream to be like the most consistent horror franchise, and while I would still say that's true, I would still consider Scream to be my favorite horror franchise. I think after this, I think I'm generally less excited for the next Scream movie, honestly. So, yeah, that's what puts it on this list. Well, guys, I hope you'll enjoy me talking about my 20 most disappointing movies of 2020 and 2020s. Again, let me know down in the comment section what are your thoughts on these movies. What films you think you consider to be the most disappointing movies to come out in the 2020s. I would generally let us know down in the comment section. Let me know any other best 2020 videos you guys want to see me do down below. I do have a few more of these videos coming very soon, so stay tuned with that. I am Samuel Wolf of Samuel Productions. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you want to see more content like this. See you on next time. As always, stay cool up at tea, and I'm sprinkling you some positivity. Peace.